Somewhere in the northern Gulf of California, there is a porpoise with dark rings around its eyes that almost no human will ever see. It is the smallest porpoise on Earth, and as of the most recent survey, released in late 2025, the number left alive is believed to be in the single digits. Fewer than 10 individuals of an entire species. In a guarded conservancy in Kenya, there are exactly 2 northern white rhinos left in the world, both female, a mother and her daughter. And in the forests between Vietnam and Laos lives an animal so rarely seen that biologists call it the Asian unicorn, one that no researcher has photographed alive in over a decade. This is our countdown of the 15 rarest and most endangered animals on Earth, the species where the entire future can sometimes be counted on your fingers. We move from number 15 down to number 1, and number 1 is that porpoise in the Gulf of California, where the newest survey found either the beginning of a recovery or the final chapter. Before we start, drop a comment and tell us where in the world you are watching from. Then stay with us, because a few of these animals are hanging on by numbers so small they should not be possible at all. Number 15. Amur leopard, Russia and China. Of all the world's big cats, this is the one built for cold. No leopard is supposed to survive. It grows a winter coat up to 7 centimeters thick and has longer legs than African leopards, so it can move through deep snow, hunting roe deer where temperatures drop below -20 degrees Celsius. A tropical cat, living like an animal of the Arctic. By the early 2000s, surveys suggested as few as 30 Amur leopards remained in the wild, one of the rarest cats ever counted. Poaching and the collapse of its prey had pushed it to the very threshold of extinction. Then, in 2012, Russia established land of the Leopard National Park, and camera traps went up across the forest. According to figures reported through 2025, the population has climbed to roughly 130 individuals on the Russian side, while a Wildlife Conservation Society study put the total across Russia and China at around 84 confirmed adults. Still tiny, but several times what it was. Here is what keeps biologists awake. A single outbreak of canine distemper, one forest fire, one wave of poaching could erase a decade of recovery in a season, and the founder group is so small that inbreeding is a measurable threat. The Amur leopard is proof that a species counted in the dozens can come back, and proof of how little margin these animals have. The leopard that learned to live in the snow is still one storm away from the numbers it started with. Number 14. Tapanuli orangutan, Sumatra, Indonesia. For most of history, the world was believed to have 2 orangutan species. Then, in 2017, a team publishing in Current Biology confirmed a third in an isolated forest called Batang Toru in northern Sumatra. It had frizzier hair, a distinct call, and a genome that had been separating from other orangutans for hundreds of thousands of years. They named it the Tapanuli orangutan. It was a discovery and an obituary at once. Fewer than 800 are believed to exist, confined to a patch of forest smaller than many national parks. That makes it not just the rarest orangutan, but the rarest great ape of any kind, rarer than the mountain gorilla. The animal lives slowly, which is the problem. A female may give birth only once every 8 or 9 years, one of the slowest reproductive rates of any mammal. Conservation researchers warn that losing even 1% of adult females each year to killing, capture, or roads would be enough to drive the species into a decline it cannot recover from. Its forest sits over rich resources, and plans for dams, mining, and roads have repeatedly threatened to cut the population into fragments, which for an ape is fatal. When groups are separated, the isolated pockets slowly wink out one by one. There is something humbling in the timing. We met this species only a few years ago, named it, mapped its genes, and in the act of discovering it, learned that it may not survive the century that discovered it. The map of life is not finished, and we are still capable of meeting a relative and saying goodbye almost at once. Number 13. Philippine eagle, The Philippines. It is one of the largest and most powerful eagles alive, with a wingspan over 2 meters and a crest that flares around its head like a mane. Its name once meant the monkey-eating eagle, and it earns it, dropping through the canopy on talons the size of a large man's hand to take flying lemurs, civets, and snakes. It is the national bird of the Philippines, and killing one is a crime. The trouble is arithmetic. A single breeding pair needs an enormous territory, sometimes over 4,000 hectares of intact forest. As the old-growth rainforest is logged, that space has shrunk to scattered fragments. The Philippine Eagle Foundation estimates only around 400 breeding pairs remain across 4 islands, and the forest keeps disappearing. The eagle's biology compounds the risk. A pair raises just 1 chick every 2 years. That is a magnificent strategy in unbroken forest and a catastrophic one in a shrinking one, because when an adult is shot, trapped, or electrocuted on a power line, its replacement cannot arrive quickly. Researchers writing in raptor journals through 2025 add a quieter warning that we may not even know the true number precisely, and that better counts are urgently needed before decisions are made. What is not uncertain is the direction. Every road that opens the forest tightens the space in which an eagle that needs a small kingdom can exist. The Philippine eagle is not rare because it is fragile. It is one of the toughest predators in Asia. It is rare because it demands wilderness on a scale we keep taking away. Number 12. Axolotl. Xochimilco, Mexico City. Almost everyone has seen one, even without knowing its name. The pink salamander with the permanent smile and a crown of feathery gills that has become an emoji and a plush toy. And there is a painful irony inside that fame. The axolotl is one of the most abundant amphibians on Earth in captivity, and one of the rarest in the wild. What makes it extraordinary is that it never grows up. Most salamanders lose their gills and leave the water. The axolotl keeps its juvenile, aquatic body for life, and it can regrow a severed limb complete with bone and nerve, and regenerate parts of its heart and brain without scarring. Laboratories worldwide study it, hoping to understand a kind of healing our own bodies have forgotten. Its home is the last remnant of the lake system the Aztecs once farmed, now surrounded by one of the largest cities on Earth. Pollution and invasive carp and tilapia that eat its eggs have collapsed the wild population. A 1998 survey found roughly 6,000 per square kilometer. Today, biologists estimate somewhere between 50 and perhaps 1,000 remain in the wild. Then, in 2025, a flicker of hope. Researchers reported that captive-bred axolotls released into restored channels around Xochimilco had survived and even gained weight, showing reintroduction can work if the water is clean enough. The axolotl raises a question almost nothing else does. How can an animal be everywhere and nowhere at once? It will thrive in tanks forever. What Xochimilco is losing is the wildness of it, the last place a creature that can regrow its own brain still swims free in the water that made it. Number 11. Kakapo, New Zealand. The kakapo breaks almost every rule about parrots. It cannot fly. It is the heaviest parrot in the world, a plump, moss-green bird that can weigh up to 4 kilograms, nocturnal and long-lived, possibly close to 100 years. When threatened, its ancient instinct is not to flee but to freeze and rely on camouflage, which worked perfectly in a land with no ground predators at all. That was its undoing when humans brought rats, cats, and stoats to New Zealand. A bird that froze on the ground was defenseless. By 1995, the entire species had collapsed to just 51 individuals. What saved it was one of the most intensive rescues ever attempted. Every surviving kakapo was moved to predator-free offshore islands. Each was given a name and fitted with a transmitter. Rangers monitor nests, supplement food, and hand-rear vulnerable chicks. It may be the most individually managed wild animal on Earth, a species where conservationists know every living member by name. The result is slow, hard-won progress. According to New Zealand's Department of Conservation and the Kakapo Recovery Program, the population has passed 240 birds, and the breeding seasons of the mid-2020s have been among the strongest on record, with 2026 pointing to one of the best in nearly 50 years. There is now serious talk of returning kakapo to the mainland. The kakapo's story is really about what it costs to hold on. Every one of those birds exists because a person is tracking it, feeding it, guarding its nest from a rat that must never land. Take that human effort away for even a few years, and the freezing instinct that once kept it alive would finish what the predators started. Number 10. Yangtze finless porpoise, Yangtze River, China. To understand how fragile this animal is, you have to understand what vanished beside it. The Yangtze was once home to the baiji, a pale freshwater dolphin that had lived there for 20 million years. In 2006, an international expedition searched the whole river and could not find one. The baiji was declared functionally extinct, the first large mammal lost in decades, without a body or a last photograph. The Yangtze finless porpoise is the last aquatic mammal left in that river. It is small and dark, with a rounded head and a mouth curved into what looks unmistakably like a smile. It is the only porpoise in the world that lives entirely in fresh water, and it watched, in a manner of speaking, its neighbor go extinct. The threats are the same ones that killed the dolphin: illegal fishing, collisions with ship traffic, and the degradation of a river draining one of the most crowded basins on Earth. A survey in 2006 counted around 1,800. By 2012, the number had fallen to roughly 1,000. Then, China acted. In 2021, it imposed a sweeping 10-year fishing ban across the Yangtze and its major lakes. The most recent surveys suggest the population has stabilized and even risen to roughly 1,200 animals, the first increase ever recorded, described cautiously as a possible turnaround. The finless porpoise carries a weight most animals do not. It is a survivor standing in the exact spot where a relative went extinct in living memory in the same water. Its smile is an accident of anatomy, but it is hard to look at that face, knowing what happened to the baiji, and not feel the river is being given one more chance it nearly did not get. Number 9. Addax, the Sahara Desert. There are animals adapted to harsh places, and then there is the addax, which lives where almost nothing else can. It is a pale antelope with long, spiraling horns, surviving in the driest interior of the Sahara, where years can pass without rain. It may never drink standing water, drawing all its moisture from desert plants, and its broad, splayed hooves work like snowshoes on soft sand. An animal that can defeat the Sahara ought to be one of the safest on Earth, and for most of history it was. But the openness that let it roam also left it exposed. It is not fast, and against a vehicle with a rifle, it has nowhere to hide. Decades of unregulated hunting, alongside oil exploration and conflict, tore through the herds. The collapse has been nearly total. According to Sahara Conservation and the IUCN, the wild population has fallen to fewer than 100 animals, and some surveys struggle to confirm even that. A creature that once numbered in the tens of thousands is down to a scattering of individuals in Niger and Chad. There is a bitter twist. Because it breeds well in captivity, there are now thousands on ranches and reserves, far more than in the wild, including large herds in Texas and the Middle East. The genes are safe. What is nearly gone is the wild desert animal itself, the one that reads the dunes and finds the rare green flush after a distant storm. Conservationists are now reintroducing captive addax into protected reserves in the Sahara. The addax survived the desert. The question is whether it can survive us long enough to be returned to it. Number 8. Sumatran rhino, Sumatra and Borneo, Indonesia. It is the smallest rhinoceros in the world and the strangest, a living link to a vanished age. It is covered in coarse reddish-brown hair, the only Asian rhino with a coat, and it is the closest living relative of the extinct woolly rhinoceros of the Ice Age. It communicates in whistles and whale-like songs. To stand near one is to stand beside a survivor from a world otherwise entirely gone, and it is almost gone with it. Fewer than 50 are believed to remain, and the 2025 State of the Rhino report from the International Rhino Foundation described it as perilously close to extinction. Those survivors are scattered in small, isolated pockets of forest, separated by distances they cannot cross. That isolation is the deepest problem, and it is subtler than poaching. When a species is spread this thin, individuals cannot find each other to breed, and females that go too long without mating develop cysts and tumors that leave them infertile. Biologists realized something devastating. The Sumatran rhino was no longer dying mainly from hunters. It was dying from loneliness. The response has been to change strategy entirely, capturing isolated individuals and bringing them into sanctuaries where breeding can be assisted. A single calf born in an Indonesian sanctuary becomes a national event. The Sumatran rhino asks a hard question. What do you do when animals are still alive, still healthy, still willing, and yet the population is so shattered it can no longer function on its own? For now, the answer is that human beings have to become the thing that brings them together, one assisted pregnancy at a time. Number 7. Red wolf. North Carolina, USA. This is the story of an animal that has gone extinct in the wild once already, been brought back, and is now teetering a second time. The red wolf is a slender, cinnamon-colored canid, smaller than a gray wolf and larger than a coyote, native only to the southeastern United States. By 1980, hunting and habitat loss had wiped it out completely in the wild. The species survived only because biologists captured the last handful of pure red wolves before they were gone. From just 14 founders, a captive program rebuilt the species, and in 1987, red wolves were released back into eastern North Carolina, one of the first attempts ever to reintroduce a large carnivore that had gone extinct in nature. For a time it worked, and the wild population grew past 100. Then it unraveled. Vehicle strikes, illegal shootings, and interbreeding with coyotes eroded it faster than it could recover. As of 2025, only around 20 red wolves survive in the wild, all in a small area of North Carolina, making it one of the most endangered wild canids on the planet. But 2025 also brought the strongest sign of hope in years. 4 new litters of pups were born in the wild, the natural breeding success the program had been desperate to see. Every pup matters when the entire wild population could fit in a classroom. The red wolf occupies a painful category. We know exactly how to breed it and where it can live. Its survival now depends less on biology than on decisions, on whether people keep making room for a predator many of their neighbors would rather not have nearby. It came back from zero once. Whether it stays back is a question about us. Number 6. Hainan gibbon. Hainan Island, China. This is, by most estimates, the rarest primate on Earth. The Hainan gibbon is a small, agile ape that lives entirely in the trees, swinging on long arms, rarely touching the ground. The males are black, the females are warm golden buff, and at dawn mated pairs sing loud, ringing duets that carry across the forest, one of the most haunting sounds in the animal world. Almost no one alive has heard it in person. In the 1950s, there were more than 2,000 across the island. Logging and hunting squeezed them into a single reserve, bewangling, and reduced them to as few as a dozen animals. The world's rarest ape was down to a number you could count on your hands and feet. Under intense protection, the population has crept upward. A study published in Science Advances in 2025 reported that it now numbers around 37 individuals in a handful of family groups. That is growth. It is also a number that should frighten anyone who reads it. An entire species, every last one, living in one forest, on one island, within range of a single typhoon. The fragility is almost architectural. In 2014, a typhoon triggered a landslide that severed groups from one another, and conservationists built a rope bridge across the gap so the gibbons could cross. Cameras later showed them using it. When a species can hinge on whether a family of apes will climb across a rope, you are looking at the definition of the edge. The Hainan gibbon has not been saved. It has been paused, held in place by rangers who guard every acre in the hope the number keeps climbing before the next storm can take it back down. Number 5. Saola. Annamite Mountains, Vietnam and Laos. Of every animal on this list, this is the one wrapped in the deepest mystery, because we are not even certain it still exists. The saola is a graceful, dark forest ox with 2 long, nearly parallel horns and striking white markings on its face, so unlike anything else that it has its own genus. It was completely unknown to science until 1992, when researchers found a skull with those extraordinary horns in a hunter's home. The discovery of a large mammal new to science stunned the biological world. They called it the Asian unicorn, and almost from the moment we met it, it began to slip away. It has never survived in captivity, and it has almost never been photographed alive. The last confirmed record came from a camera trap in Laos in 2013. Since then, despite repeated searches, no one has proven a single one remains. In May 2025, an international team led by researchers in Denmark and Vietnam sequenced the saola's complete genome for the first time. The data confirmed it is even more genetically distinct than anyone realized and allowed scientists to estimate that at most a few dozen might survive, and possibly none. That same year, teams in Laos launched a last-chance effort, using detection dogs and environmental DNA, testing streams, and even leeches for genetic traces of a passing saola. The saola sits in a category almost nothing else occupies. Its status cannot be proven and cannot be disproven. Somewhere in those misty mountains, there may be a handful of unicorns moving quietly through the undergrowth, or there may be none. It is the rarest kind of endangerment there is, where the question is no longer how many are left, but whether any are left at all. Number 4. Spix's macaw, northeastern Brazil. If you have seen the animated film about a rare blue parrot who is the last male of his kind, you have already met a version of this bird, and the real story is even more extreme. The Spix's macaw is a slender, silver-blue parrot found nowhere on Earth except a small region of thorny woodland in Brazil. It was always rare, and trapping for the pet trade finished it. Collectors paid enormous sums, and each capture pulled another thread from a population near the end. By the year 2000, the last known wild Spix's macaw, a lone male, disappeared, and the species was declared extinct in the wild. For the first time in living memory, a parrot existed only in cages. But not all had been lost. Scattered across private collections were a small number of survivors, and in an extraordinary international effort, these last birds, held in places as far apart as Germany, Qatar, and Brazil, were gathered into a coordinated breeding program. Every bird was genetically precious. Then came the moment almost no one expected. In 2022, more than 2 decades after the last wild bird vanished, captive-bred Spix's macaws were released back into the Brazilian scrubland, where they had gone extinct. Since then, released birds have survived, adapted, and begun to nest, and wild-hatched chicks have started to appear again. The Spix's macaw is the rarest possible good news, a species that crossed into extinction in the wild, sat there for 20 years, and was carried back across the line by human hands. It is not safe, but it flies free again in a sky that not long ago held none of them. Extinction in the wild is supposed to be a one-way door. This is one of the very few animals ever to come back through it. Number 3. Javan rhino. Ujung Kulon, Java, Indonesia. There is only one place on Earth where you can find a wild Javan rhino, a single peninsula of forest and volcanic terrain at the far western tip of Java. Every wild Javan rhino alive exists there and nowhere else. It is a dusky grey rhino with skin folded into plates like armor, and unlike its African cousins, most females have no horn at all. It is so shy that researchers monitor it almost entirely through hidden cameras. For years, the count crept in the right direction. Careful monitoring and births caught on camera traps pushed the recorded population towards 76 animals, and conservationists dared to feel optimistic. Ujung Kulon looked like a rare success. Then the ground shifted. In 2025, reporting through outlets including Mongabay revealed that a poaching crisis had struck the park. A criminal network had been killing Javan rhinos for their horns, and the true surviving population may be far lower than official counts suggested, with some estimates falling to around 50. For a species that lives in exactly one location, poachers reaching its only refuge was close to a worst-case scenario. That is the defining vulnerability, and it cannot be engineered away. One eruption on nearby Krakatau, one tsunami on that exposed coast, one disease outbreak, one poaching ring could take not a population, but the entire species. Conservationists have long argued for a second wild population elsewhere. It has not yet happened. The Javan rhino is a lesson in the single point of failure. A species can be protected, monitored, and genuinely recovering, and still be one catastrophe from zero, simply because it has nowhere else to be. Everything this animal is fits inside one forest at the end of one island. Number 2. Northern White Rhino, Ol Pejeta Conservancy, Kenya. There are exactly 2 of them left in the world. Not 2,000, not 200. 2. Their names are Najin and Fatu, a mother and her daughter, and they live at the Ol Pejeta Conservancy in Kenya under 24-hour armed protection. Both are female, which means that, in the plainest biological terms, the subspecies is already functionally extinct. There is no male, and there will be no natural calf. The last male, a rhino named Sudan, died in 2018 at 45, and a photograph of a keeper resting a hand on his head in his final hours traveled around the world. Sudan had become the face of what extinction actually looks like up close. Not a statistic, but an old animal at the literal end of a family stretching back millions of years. And yet scientists refuse to write the ending. A consortium known as BioRescue, led by researchers at the Leibniz Institute in Berlin, with partners in several countries, is attempting something never done for a large mammal. Frozen sperm from the last males is used to fertilize eggs harvested from Fatu, creating northern white rhino embryos in a laboratory. Because neither female can safely carry a pregnancy, the plan is to implant those embryos into southern white rhino surrogates. It is a race against time. Some scientists are hopeful. Others question whether a subspecies can be resurrected from 2 individuals and a freezer. The northern white rhino is what the very bottom of the scale looks like, a species reduced to a mother and a daughter, kept alive as a living idea by frozen cells and human refusal to let go. It is the starkest reminder that extinction is not an abstraction of other eras. It is happening now to an animal with a name in a field in Kenya. Number 1. Vaquita, Gulf of California, Mexico. This is the most endangered marine mammal on Earth, and it is running out of ocean. The vaquita is the smallest porpoise in the world, barely 1.5 meters long, with dark rings around its eyes that give it the look of a shy face drawn in charcoal. It was only described by science in 1958, and it lives in one small, murky corner of the upper Gulf of California and nowhere else. Most people will live their whole lives without ever seeing a photograph of a living one. The vaquita is not dying from being hunted. It is dying by accident. In the same waters lives a fish called the totoeba, whose swim bladder sells for staggering sums in illegal markets. Poachers set fine gill nets to catch it, and the vaquita, swimming through the same water, becomes tangled and drowns. The rarest marine mammal alive is being erased as a side effect of catching a different fish. The decline has been nearly vertical. In 1997, there were an estimated 600. By 2018, fewer than 20. The most recent monitoring effort, carried out in 2025 by scientists working with Sea Shepherd and Mexican researchers, estimates the number now alive is likely in the single digits. And here is the flicker of hope that makes it number one rather than an obituary. The survivors appear healthy, observers keep citing newborn calves, and geneticists found the vaquita is not doomed by inbreeding, meaning it could recover from a handful of individuals if the nets simply stopped. That is what makes the vaquita the most heartbreaking animal on this list. There is no mystery about what is killing it or how to stop it. Fewer than 10 remain, and what happens to them is entirely and only up to us. Take a moment and hold all of them in your mind at once. A leopard that learned to live in the snow, climbing back from 30. A great ape we met only a few years ago and may lose in the same lifetime. An eagle that needs a small kingdom of forest just to raise one chick. A salamander that can regrow its own brain down to its last wild waters. A flightless parrot known to its keepers by name, a river porpoise standing where a dolphin went extinct beside it, an antelope that beat the Sahara and could not beat us. An Ice Age rhino dying of loneliness, a wolf brought back from zero and slipping again, an ape whose entire species could climb across a single rope bridge. A unicorn we cannot prove is still alive. A blue macaw that flew back through the door of extinction. A rhino at the end of one island, 2 rhinos at the end of an entire lineage, and a small smiling porpoise, fewer than 10 of them left in one corner of one sea. Every animal on this list represents a threshold, a point where the whole future of a species can be counted, sometimes on a single hand. And running through all 15 is one quiet, insistent truth. Almost none of these animals is disappearing because of something we do not understand. We know what the vaquita needs, we know what the Javan rhino needs, we know how to breed the red wolf, and where the addax can live. In nearly every case, the science is not the missing piece, the choice is. That is also the reason this is not simply a list of endings. The Amur leopard climbed back from 30. The kakapo passed 200. The Spix's macaw is flying again in Brazil. The finless porpoise ticked upward for the first time in its history. These animals prove that when people decide a species is worth keeping, the numbers can turn, even from the very bottom. Rarity is not the same as doom. It is a warning, and a warning is only useful if someone acts on it. So we will leave you with a question, and we would genuinely like to read your answers. Of all 15, which of these animals do you most hope is still here in 50 years? Tell us in the comments. And if you found this worth your time, consider subscribing, because there is more of the natural world, its wonders and its edges, still to explore. Thank you for watching, and thank you for caring enough to make it all the way to number 1.